This mounted deer head is finally home after being misplaced for 30 years. It's not the biggest buck I ever shot, but the only deer head that was ever mounted due to the backstory. Me and my dad went hunting almost every year starting when I was about 13. We took many bucks in Ohio. Does weren't legal. Shotgun was the only season. Back then, there were no trail cameras, hunting clothes, or whatever cotton or wool you had. You usually put sandwich bags over your feet and hands to stay dry. There was no baiting. You had to know and understand deer and their patterns. The night before opening day got down into the teens. A snow front dropped 12 plus inches of snow for opening day. I had built a deer stand, basically a maybe 12 by 18 inch plywood platform in a tree, next to but 30 yards from a valley. The deer came down every morning into a huge field of whatever was growing. Soybeans, corn, or alfalfa. They were rotated each year. So anyways, make it to the deer stand about an hour before daylight. My dad goes to the further field so that we have both fields covered. It's freezing, the wind's blowing, the snow's blowing, it's overcast so we don't even have the moonlight. It's almost blizzard conditions. My knees are knocking after about 30 minutes. Every shake of my body sounds like a trash bag being shaken. I hear something, but I can't see it. The sound lasts for several minutes just as daylight is starting. It goes from a noise to a shadow to finally I see this buck's rack. It's wide, but I can't tell how many points. It's technically legal at 30 minutes prior to sunrise. It's slowly making its way to the field. Maybe it sensed something, it was cautious, and it being cautious was buying me more time for just a little bit more daylight. If you know about hunting, those early mornings turning from dark to light are the coldest time of the day. I was absolutely freezing. I had my old Stevens 12 gauge pump. I've had it for forever. I've taken hundreds of squirrels, rabbits, grouse, and deer with it. I knew the gun well. I go to disengage the safety, and the only time in my life I can remember the safety clicked and that buck bolted. I calm myself down. It's okay. It's early yet. I sit there for a few more hours freezing. The deer pattern changed due to the storm. They stayed bedded down. About 30 minutes before I'm supposed to meet up with my dad, I hear a gunshot. We use signals and noises to communicate only when needed when hunting. I listened and waited. No help was needed, he never called, but I finally decided to go check on my dad. I unload the gun, get out of the deer stand, reload the gun, and start making my way to him. I follow his tracks, but I knew where he was going and would be. I go to the end of the woods line, cross the creek, head back up the woods line, and his tracks suddenly go somewhere else, not where I expected him to go. He wouldn't change where he was going. I look around and don't see him. I think he must have made a wide turn for some reason, but I continued to where I knew he would be. I came to this huge oak tree that had blown down in a storm earlier that year. We had intended to cut that old oak for firewood before winter, but it never got to it. It still has a top in it. I go to cross that oak and a buck jumps out of the tops. I see antlers, raise my shotgun and fire. Boom! I see the hit, but it's a little low. Reload quickly. Boom! I see the hit almost perfectly at the shoulder a few inches back. The deer was running away from me at an angle, but the buck didn't fall after a few yards. It kept running. I ran out of sight, but I knew my shot was good. About that time, the buck disappeared. I heard my dad and turned to see him approaching way back in the opposite corner of that field. He makes his way to me and takes 15-20 minutes to get there. I told him I jumped a buck and shot. My shot was good, but it headed to the creek to die. He tells me he's tracking a buck he shot earlier. As soon as he said that, I walked over to where I jumped that buck. There was blood everywhere, so basically I shot his deer. We decided to get lunch, warm up, let the buck bleed out, and recover it. We returned later with just knives and flashlights. That creek only had water when it was heavy rain, and it was just enough runoff from the hills and mountains. It had a lot of cutouts in the banks, little caves, and we recovered a lot of deer that crawled up into them and died. So we look and look and look and finally found the buck, exactly like we thought it had crawled into one of those many caves and died, but we couldn't tell if it was dead. Being a little more cautious this time because a year or two before the same thing happened, except I nearly got gored when I grabbed a buck's hind leg and it sprang to life. We were looking for a stick, but all the snow. I finally cut down a sapling, approached the deer, poke it a few times, it's dead. We drag it out, little spiked buck. Those little spiked bucks make good food for the freezer, but nothing to brag about. We seldom hunted big bucks. In the late 80s, 6 to 8 pointers were considered big. We always hunted for food and not bragging rights. So we still argue to my dad's death which one of us gut shot that deer. I saw my shots though, but because we both shot it and because the meat was useless, we had the head mounted. It was the only deer head we ever mounted, and I continue that tradition to this day. Deer, it's just food.